This is the men's all-around final, followed by the women's all-around final. Here are the competitors that have qualified. In this rotation, we will be seeing the pommel horse competition. Here are the men who have qualified for that, and it will also be the floor exercise rotation. We are going to begin our coverage with floor exercise. Joining me is Olympic gold medalist Tim Daggett. Our first competitor we're going to see is Andreas Becker.
And Andreas is certainly one of the most seasoned of the German delegation. He has competed many, many times internationally. The world champion. Very, very strong all-around performer. He is, however, starting out on event that is not his strongest suit. Very, very apt for still ranked pommel horse medals many times.
Should add that since this is the all-around final, there will be no individual medals awarded for each of the apparatus. One gold medal will be awarded, and that is to the best overall or all-around gymnast. So all 6 scores count for these men in this event.
Certainly consistency is the critical game right here. In men's floor exercise, the key pass is usually the first and last one. He'll do his most difficult element right here. Full twisting double back. Nicely landed. Like I said, though, Andreas really does not have the difficulty that we'll see from some of the other competitors a little later on. Beautiful Thomas Flair combination. Moving right up into a handstand and then back down to the floor. Throughout the competition, you'll see the competitors do a skill similar to that. That was a press to handstand. You must show strength in the floor exercise event, and that requirement has been fulfilled now. Now, I mentioned that he maybe does not have the most difficulty of some of the athletes, but he is full twisting double somersault, and the smallest of hops. That's an upgrade of difficulty for Andreas. He has not been using that for too long, so that will help him in some of the more difficult elements that you need to perform to bring in those big scores.
Okay, let's take another look at his third tumbling pass.
This is very unique. He actually combines a couple different elements into a whip through to a double twisting laid out somersault. Very nicely done. The whip back.
Okay, and the score for Andreas Becker, 9.55. Nice way to start a meet. Now you're looking at Mike Beckman as we move our cameras over to the pommel horse. Again, there are 2 events in this rotation, floor exercise and pommel horse. Mike Beckman is our first competitor.
Now, if you had to pick an event to start on, or one that you would not like to start on, I would say in the all-around finals, this would be the one that you would not want to start on. You just have so much nervous energy at the beginning of a competition, and pommel horse, the timing is so critical. But boy, Mike is proving me wrong thus far. He's working very well. One of the keys to international gymnastics on the pommel horse at this point is to show a variety of skills, and he's done that so far. Nice extended double leg circles. His flare work, and right up to the handstand, and a good landing.
A very solid routine, not a great routine, I would say. Nothing really made me go ooh or ah, but a good performance, and as you said, to be the icebreaker, that's tough. So Mike Beckman of Germany, even though he's in front of the hometown crowd, giving it his best shot here, but not really wowing the judges.
Well, he's doing some flare work here, and it is very difficult, but you'll notice that his hips are a little bit, we call it piked in gymnastics. They're bent up close to his body, and if he extended out a little bit more, be a little bit more virtuous, and he would also bring in probably a higher score.
9.35 is the number for Mike Beckman as we go back over to floor exercise. And we leave the Germans now when we look at a gymnast from Hungary. This is Zoltán Csupola.
Remember, on floor exercise, power is the most important thing. He'll try to show us his most powerful skill right here. Full twisting double back, and you notice that little bit of a hop right there. That, of course, will be a deduction. Now, that's real interesting. That's actually called an Arabian double front. what makes that a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, Leandro, than his first pass is his landing is totally blind. He cannot see the floor until his feet touch. So it's very much a timing element. Notice that the athlete will cover all 4 parts of the floor, go from corner to corner. That is a requirement. Once again, a press to a handstand, a slightly different variation than we saw from Andreas, but a requirement. There is also a requirement. You must do a one-hand or one-leg balance and hold that. See if he can stick the dismount, double back, and a slight hop again, but a pretty clean routine.
Both runs of Hungary.
You know, once again, he really doesn't have that difficulty that you need to break into that 9-8 barrier around there. But this is his most...
19.
Because the landing is totally blind.
But he lands it nicely, gets a 9.5, and we'll be back with more from Germany after this. We are going to stay with floor exercise for a while. This is Ralf Buchner of Germany. He is now the 3rd German competitor we have seen in this competition. Ralf Buchner is trying to get a score of 9.55. That's the highest score we've seen in this apparatus, except by Andreas Becker, also of Germany.
But once again, an all-around competition is a long way. Just like a marathon, you have to be consistent through 6 events. Ralph starts out with the same mount that we've seen from both of our athletes. That's called a full twisting double somersault. He lands flawlessly. And once again, we're seeing a little bit of a carbon copy out here on the floor exercise. A little bit more virtuous, though. He has a little bit more height, a little more amplitude throughout his tumbling. Other variations of press skill went to a position called the flange. I really like that pass, the full twisting side somersault. You don't see it all that often. Slight bobble right there. That's going to cost him at least a 1/10 of a point. Those are the kind of things that just make your coach cringe. It's such an easy element, and you just can't do that kind of thing. Beautiful landing there. Absolutely fixed that one forward, and that will really put a good thought into the judge's mind. When you go out and you do an exercise like that, that perfect landing really makes a difference. Take a look. I believe this is going to be his second pass. An Arabian double front. Nice landing. He has it choreographed to do a forward roll right out of that.
Nice handstand, nice score, 9.55, but that bobble on the Y scale may have cost him. Now we're going to go back over to the horse. This is Vitaly Sherbo, Commonwealth of Independence.
Certainly, Ralph, 9.55 puts him tied for the lead, but when you have a guy like Vitaly Sherbo who's up right after you, 9.55 is shaky territory, to say the least. He, in my opinion, is the best gymnast in the world. He is so complete as an athlete. You see it on every event. There, he's already showed us a tremendous amount of difficulty traveling the horse. Beautiful extension in his flare work. Every element done to its fullest. Stockley right up to a handstand, full twist. Perfect exercise for Vitaly. The thing that always really puts me back is it looks so easy for these athletes. It's just a walk in the park for him. The virtuosity, wonderfully extended body, and of course, a perfect landing.
Now his score is 9.65. That's the best score we've seen on the board. Certainly catapults him to the top of his first rotation. And as you mentioned, there are 5 more events to go for all the gymnasts have already completed. Now we're looking at Rustam Sharipov, also from the Commonwealth of Independent States. He is on floor exercise.
I think we'll probably see a different mount from Rustam today. Double layout somersault. And just a little bit over-rotated, and he steps out of bounds right there. You must stay within that tape mark. dangerously close once again. As in tennis, the line is in, which is okay, but if your heel or any part of your body goes beyond that, there will be a tenth of a deduction for every body part that goes outside of the area.
They don't break down toes, do they? One toe, two toe.
No, I don't think so. 1 foot is considered probably a tenth of a deduction.
Okay.
It is a slight gray area, actually. Well, he has had a couple of deductions, as we've said, Leandro, but the difficulty in this exercise is greater than we've seen thus far. Dismount, critical to stick, full twisting, double, and a perfect landing. That's going to certainly bring a couple extra points to Rustam.
It's Rustam Sharapov of the Commonwealth of Independent States as we take another look at some strong tumbling.
Very, very different path here. A back with a half twist right into a punch front. And then he continues tumbling, does a double twist. Watch this. He'll change directions right here, go from flipping backwards to forwards. Very intricate, very difficult. We're going to look at his dismount here. Full twisting, double somersault. Many of the athletes we've seen today use this as their mount, and watch the landing. He nailed it.
And the judges give him a 9.6 as we move over to another competitor on the floor exercise, Canada's Curtis Hibbert.
Curtis has been around the gymnastics scene such a long time. He is truly a veteran of the sport. This is one of his better events. A very powerful athlete. Double laid out somersault and a nice with Rustam. You step out of bounds and it is a deduction. It's such a difficult mount. Dealt with it so well. Has the curve. It's on basically a corner part where he's turning around. I always love that from Curtis. With his signature on the floor exercise.
I think it's important to show style and distinguishes it from the other gymnasts.
Certainly does, and Curtis has many elements like that on all of the different events. Different variations that required balance skill. He has only his dismount. Step back handsprings, double back somersault, and that is going to really cost him. He put both hands down and show support on the forward.
Stepping out of bounds.
Well, a drastic start. Certainly will not be pleased with this. His tumbling pass here is his mount. Double laid out somersault. That means he stays extended throughout.
And that's where he stepped out of bounds. His score is a 9 even. Right now we pause for a regional break. Stuttgart, Germany. Here are the standings after one rotation. No surprise that the Commonwealth of Independent States, Vitaly Scherbo, is in first place. Commonwealth of Independent States, formerly the Soviet Union. And here are the rest of the standings for the competitors in this event. Now we're going to go back over to the pommel horse. This is the second rotation and our second opportunity to see Zoltan Subala of Hungary. First time we saw him was on floor exercise. He got a 9.5. Let's see what he does on pommel horse.
And Zoltan follows another great Hungarian, Zoltan Magyar, who revolutionized this event. Hungarians, for many years, their trademark was doing more skills on the pommel horse than anybody. Working very well now, showing us a complete spindle in the flare position. That means his body is twisting the opposite direction. His body is circling. You often see this midway through the exercise. Those are called single-leg scissors, and they are, of course, a requirement on pommel horse. The handstand dismount and a nice landing. Good exercise, really, once again, doesn't knock your socks off, Leandra, but an excellent pommel horse routine.
Is it good enough to beat the 9.65 that Scherbo showed us on pommel horse?
Well, certainly not the level of difficulty that we saw from Scherbo. And his extension is not quite up to par.
And the judges agree with you, Tim Daggett. They don't give him a very high score, but a respectable 9.5. Not good enough to overtake Sherbo. Now, we're going to stay with pommel horse, but we're going to look at Lin Huashan of China. Now, he struggled in his first event, but let's see if he can rally back on the pommel horse.
And he will certainly have to rally. 8.55 is a disastrous start for a competition like the DTB Full Cal. Very nice, long, extended body.
Now, he's very quick, it seems.
Yeah, he's swinging a little bit faster than some of the other gymnasts. That's basically a style. But this is extremely difficult work. That skill, of course, the Thomas Flair. But he did that in the middle of the horse. Beautiful scissors, by the way. Extremely virtuous. Oh, this is an excellent routine. Wonderful job.
And rally back he does. Lin Huashan of China got everybody's attention with that performance. Now we're looking at Ralph Buchner. There's some difficulty with Lin Huashan's score. We'll get that to you as soon as we know it. Ralph Buchner of Germany, also on pommel horse.
Good start for Ralph on his first event. Nice one pommel circle there. You'll notice, though, when he's traveling the horse in Flair, we've seen the athletes do it with a lot more virtuosity. Lin from China certainly had much wider straddle of the legs and just a better overall swing. This is a good exercise, but it really is not the type of exercise that's going to bring the big thing.
All right, we've been giving the score for Lin Huashan. It was 9.6. We're going to take another look at Ralph Buchner's performance.
And once again, it was a nice exercise, but really not the extension. You notice that his hips are very close to the pommel. He doesn't have the virtuosity that we've seen from some of the other athletes, and that, I'm sure, will be reflected in his score. The Flair work is good, but not that extended.
His score, 9.5. And we're going to stay with pommel horse and look at Ah Hyul of Korea.
A very good start with a 9.6 on his first event. We'll see if he can keep the streak going here on pommel horse. Looks like it's a long jump up for Ak on the pommel horse. Well, I can see right from the start that he really does not have the extension that he needs on the pommel horse. His hips are extremely close to the pommels, and I hate to ever say that to jinx an athlete, but you could tell that just the basic circle that he needs to do the difficulty at this level is not there, and he will most likely run into a problem. He certainly did.
There will be no generous scores for Ah Hyul. Certainly a fall works very heavily against a gymnast at this caliber of competition. Now we go to our leading competitor after one rotation, Vitaly Sherbo from the Commonwealth of Independent States.
And he has one of the most innovative routines on the still rings. Actually, he helped pioneer a skill that was such a crowd pleaser that it is in the next quadrennium's compulsory exercises. He'll show it to us halfway through. It's very innovative, very different.
What you are looking at now are the optional performances. Compulsory routines refer to a standard routine that everybody must perform for the judges. Everybody does the same routine. And then in the second phase of the competition, everybody performs their own choreographed routine. And what you're looking at now are considered optionals. So when you refer to the compulsories, that's a phase of competition we don't always see in television.
One thing that is compulsory in the optional on the still rings, you must be strong, and Vitaly certainly is. This is his third strength part. Does it very well. Now here's that skill. He'll actually cross the ring, swing through them, untangle himself, and land right in a handstand. Beautifully done.
And when he first did that, wasn't that a problem for the judges? Because you're not supposed to make those rings swing.
Well, it certainly shook some people up, so to speak, but he works so well out of it, and that's the critical thing. A lot of times the athlete will do a skill, and it may be innovative, it may be difficult, but they just can't seem to finish it off. Let's watch this, though. He'll cross the rings, swing right through them. This is called a dislocate. He'll untangle himself, and this is the critical aspect. It's so flawless, the finish, right to the handstand.
Well, the judges like it. They give him a 9.65. Vitaly Sherbo from the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Perfect landing. That's why he gets the score.
Rustem Sharapov, a fellow countryman of Sherbo's, also from the Commonwealth of Independent States, as we go back to pommel horse.
Traveling across the horse, that skill is named after a famous Hungarian gymnast that we mentioned earlier, Zoltán Magyar. Sharapov is working very well at this point. Little bit of a problem right there, had to struggle. Maybe a half a tenth. Certainly not the extension that we saw from Sherbo, but a good exercise. This is an upgraded difficulty for Sharapov. He travels the length of the horse at the end of his routine. A nice exercise.
His predecessor on pommel horse was Akyul Yu of Korea. Now, he's the young man who struggled, fell off. His score was 8.55. I'm sure that the judges will award Rustem Sharapov a much higher number.
Well, significantly. He showed us a good variety of skills on the pommel horse. This is his handstand, and he pirouettes to a perfect landing.
9.55 the score. We'll be back.
Critics.
Everlasting memories, brought to you by the International Olympic Committee.
Welcome back. I'm Leandra Riley, along with 1984 Olympic gold medalist Tim Daggett. And right now we are watching the DTB Cup from Stuttgart, Germany. This is Andreas Becker on pommel horse.
And Andreas is very good on the pommel horse event. This is one of his best. Many times he'll make finals at a world championship. Once again, we've been talking about the extension. He swings so well. His hips are very high off of the horse.
Uh-oh.
Boy, that is so uncharacteristic of Andreas. On such a basic element as well. That's very surprising. So with some nice flare work to the handstand. Boy, that is disappointing. I'm sure he is a little bit dumbfounded at this point on the skill that one would certainly take for granted at this level. Really not a skill at all, just going from the double leg circles right here into the scissor movement. He'll kick his leg off and just barely slide a little bit too far over. And of course, when you stop your body like that in gymnastics on an event like pommel horse, it's 0.5 of a point.
And it's hard to get your body back going again. You've got no momentum.
It certainly is. He has just his dismount at this point.
Oh, his score is 9.1.
Well, that certainly will do damage to his placing in the all-around.
After 2 rotations, here are the numbers. Vitaly Sherbo still out in front. Fellow countryman Sharapov is in second. Ralf Buchner of Germany is in third. Again, that's after 2 rotations. Here are the rest of the competitors. Again, there are 14 in this event here in Stuttgart. All right, that was pommel horse. Now we're going to go back over to the still rings. Ralf Buchner of Germany is our next competitor.
So he's completed 2 rotations in his all-around competition. Remember, the thing to look for on the still rings is 2 different swings to a handstand. You notice he's chalking up his hands and a device that we call in gymnastics grips. It's a large piece of leather, and there's a wooden piece of material in between the leather and the palm called a dowel. And, actually will wrap around the rings and permit the athlete to hold on as they're swinging through the bottom from the handstand.
In your entire gymnastics career, have they always used dowels, or was that something that sort of came along in the 80s?
Well, certainly at the beginning of my career, we were using the grips, but the dowels was a technological advancement that somebody discovered and happened maybe late 70s or so. Nice iron cross there. You have to press to a handstand. This is a requirement using strength, but you also must swing to the handstand. He's shown us both of those requirements. And the biggest requirement of all, you've got to stick the landing, and he does. A little bit bent knees in the air, but the landing is so essential in the big scores.
Now, in women's gymnastics, the women wear just leotards. In men's gymnastics, we've seen them on the floor exercise wear shorts, yet on the rings, they're wearing the long pants.
Is you must wear pants on the apparatus called the still rings, the pommel horse, high bar, and parallel bars. On vault and floor exercise, you can wear pants, but they usually opt for the shorts.
All right. As you saw, the score for Buchner was 9.5. As we move now over to vaulting, our first opportunity to see this event, Vitaly Sherbo, our leader, is our first competitor.
And we saw some new elements from Vitaly on the still rings. He certainly didn't pioneer this, but he's the one to bring it to the forefront of men's gymnastics. It's a Yurchenko-styled vault. Beautiful double twist. Wow. I've seen him do this vault many times, and never quite that well. He's a little bit different. Usually the athletes from the former Soviet Union, very reserved. When Vitaly does a good exercise, he lets the crowd know and has his own little way of showing his emotion here. Beautiful landing.
And a great score, 9.75. Rustam Sharipov is over at the still rings.
This is interesting. Rustam is actually being lifted to the rings by Yefim Furman, a former gymnast for the former Soviet Union, but now a coach in the United States, and my old collegiate coach.
It's a small world.
Beautiful Maltese position. These athletes are so strong. Strength to weight ratio is so critical on the still ring. Press to a handstand. Picked up just a little bit of swing there, and quite the power that I've seen from some of the other athletes. Swing element is dismount. Full twisting, double somersault. Actually had to pike his body a little bit on that, however. That dismount, I'm sure he intends to do in the completely stretched or laid out position.
Rustam Sharipov gets a 9.55, and we'll be back with more still rings competition, but first, this.
More excitement. The Olympics Triplecast. To order, call 1-800-OLYMPIC. Call now. The Olympics Triplecast.
Makes the perfect gift for Father's Day and graduation.
Looking at Andreas Becker of Germany, and he's getting ready to compete on the still rings.
Remember, Andreas had that fall on the pommel horse that was very uncharacteristic for him. He's moving to his strongest event in gymnastics, the still rings. Just look at those arms. They say only one thing, that this is a very good event for Andreas. World champion on this event. One of Germany's greatest hopes for an Olympic medal this summer in Barcelona. And certainly a contender on this event always. He will show us go far and above the strength requirements. Do a couple of them on the still ring. Right there is his strength press to a handstand. He'll lower down into an inverted cross and press back up to a handstand. I cannot tell you how hard that is, Leandra. And then power down into a skill called a Maltese. And then just look at the ease. He is so strong.
That certainly explains those arms.
But you also must swing to the handstand, and look at how steady he's keeping the ring. Arms totally off the straps. Beautiful double layout and just the smallest of steps, but an excellent routine.
Too bad he got the 9-1 on the pommel horse. That was really an impressive performance. 9.8 is the score for Becker on the still rings. 9.8. What a show.
And, you know, he actually downgraded the difficulty on his dismount. He's just so strong that there's no need to risk anything. Lowers the head and lifts it up to show the judges that this stuff is easy for him.
All right, here are the standings after three rotations, rather. Sherbo still out in front, Sharipov in second, and Buchner is in third. The rest of the 14 competitors, Curtis Hibbert remains in 9th place with 27.45. We'll be back. We are continuing with our coverage of the vault. You're looking at Ralph Buchner of Germany.
That's the answer to a 9.75 posted by Vitaly Sherbo. Nice laid out Cuervo, but a big step on the landing. And when you only have one skill, like in the vault, the landing is even more important than on the other events. It's a very difficult vault. He'll try to flip totally in the laid out position, has to pike down just a little bit. You see it right there. And of course, that big step forward is going to cost him.
9-4 the score for Buchner as we look at Akil of Korea. Now, when you're in an all-around final, since the individual apparatus really doesn't count, do you water things down to get the all-around score as high as you can, or do you go for broke on everything?
Well, if you want to place near the top in a competition like this, you have to go all out. And we're seeing that. Wow, what a powerful vault. Tremendous distance. He traveled maybe 10, 15 feet from the horse on that, and that will get him some tenths. But he also, in the course of that, had to take that big hop. Look at the height in the air. Beautiful extended body. Just a little bit short on the landing, and the big hop forward, and almost another slight step.
That resulted in a 9.55 as we move back over to the parallel bars. Our first chance to see this apparatus. Vitaly Sherbo, our leader, will be the first man we see on this event.
Well, from this position as an analyst, we're always trying to find the strengths and weaknesses of the different athletes that we're talking about. And the strength of Vitaly Sherbo is that every apparatus is a unique experience. He is so wonderful. He always has something just a little bit different to show us. And to pinpoint a weakness, it's very difficult for somebody of his caliber. He is just so well-rounded. Giant with a full twist. That's called a Diamidov. Skills right there. They're called Keeley twirl. Just about every type of element you can do in this exercise. Here's the dismount, double pike. He's had problems in the past. Just a small step. Excellent routine for Vitaly Sherbo.
Tough dismount. I thought the mount was a little Scott. He just traveled with his leg over and hopped on, but I guess on T-bars, they really don't go all out to the mount.
Well, right there, that skill that we just saw, the giant Diamidov, is so difficult that the judges maybe give him a little bit of leeway. It's a very good observation, though, Leandra. He's basically just setting up for that major set of underbar skills right there.
His score, 9.75, as we now look at Rustam Sharapov, his teammate, and he is over at the vault.
Well, Rustam is trying to break into the upper echelons of the former Soviet Union gymnastics. He also does the Yurchenko-style vault. Nowhere near as difficult as Vitaly. Only does one twist, whereas Vitaly did two. Vitaly stuck his, and Rustam had to take a small hop backwards, so it certainly will not bring the score that we saw for Vitaly.
They flashed his score. It's a 9.4.
A little bit high on the horse. Doesn't quite get into the horse enough, so can't have the explosion off, and has to take that small hop on the landing.
He gets the 9.4 as we continue with the vaulting competition, and Andreas Becker, so strong on the rings, struggled on the pommel horse. Let's see what he does in vault.
Really a veteran athlete on back. First 8 years. It's one of them. Full twisting Sukahara and a big step on the landing. Everybody has been just a little bit average on vaulting, besides Sherbo. This is another vault that would not bring the major score in the biggest of meets.
9.4 is the score. We will continue more vaulting parallel bars and high bar. Welcome back to Stuttgart. You're looking at Zoltan Sokola of Hungary. He is getting ready to execute his one and only vault. In women's gymnastics, they do two. Here they are doing just one.
That's correct. 25 meters to sprint down the runway and rebound off of the horse as well as you can. Slight hop on the landing. And he also, Leandra, had to pike his body in the air a little bit. It was a clean vault until that happened. But when you remain straight or in the laid out position, it's a more difficult vault, considered more difficult. There's Pike right there, a little bit too early. Going to cause him a slight deduction in addition to the step.
All right, they gave him a 9.4 as we take a look at the standings now. Sherbo still in front, Sharapov in second, Buchner still in third, 1, 2, and 3. There are places 9 through 14, a very close competition. Still, anything could happen. This is after 4 rotations. There's still 2 apparatus to go. Over at the parallel bars now is Ralph Buchner of Germany. Now, taking a look at the grips on this, there are none. The gymnasts go barehanded. There's no dowels. And why the difference between this and the steering?
Well, it's just basically the apparatus. And you're noticing that he's actually putting something on the bar. He's chalking the bars up. And before this, he most likely added a solution to the bars. Everybody has their own special blend. Some use just a plain water. Some are using a sugar and water base to add a little bit of stickiness to the bars so that the underbar work will be a little bit easier. It is all legal. Actually, very difficult to hold on to the bars. He did it quite well right there. Beautiful peach basket, right to a handstand. This skill at Diamondov 1 1/4. I always like to see the athlete show some different elements. Oh, beautiful front 1 3/4 somersault. Parallel bars beginning to look a little bit like high bar nowadays with the release skills. Double back dismount, and just the smallest of steps. Nice exercise. My only comment about that is right after he did his 1 3/4 front somersault, he has to do a part of no value. We'll take a look at it right here. Does a front uprise, excellent hip height so he can get off of the bars, way in the air right there. He lays away right there, and that skill is called a part of no value. That is 1/10 of a point and will be factored in.
9.65 was the score for Buchner as we look at Vitaly Sherbo over at the high bar. Now, we haven't seen the high bar yet in this competition, so he'll be our icebreaker. Now we're back to the grips and the dowels.
Everybody uses something a little bit different. Vitaly has a piece of leather, obviously, and I believe he does choose to use a dowel. Almost everybody does on the still rings. High bar, it's a little bit left up to the discretion of the individual athlete. Of course, there are requirements on high bar, but the most important thing is to show flight. He'll do it right there. Beautiful one-arm to catch up. He'll show us another release right here. This is called a laid-out to catch up. Beautiful position in the air. Setting up for his dismount. Double layout with 2 twists. This is about the best I've ever seen Vitaly look. And he certainly has that face like, this is just so easy for me, guys. No matter how hard you try, you can come close, but you're not going to catch me.
He continues to distance himself from the rest of the pack. They've just flashed his score, 9.8.
And it's because of skills like this. Look at the height. Beautiful Tkachev. He sets up, and he'll show us one more time. It's amazing the power this takes, and he actually looks elegant in the air. Wonderful.
Now we'll go back over to the parallel bars, and Rustem Sharapov is ready to compete.
Now, Leandra, he's going to mount the bars sideways on the end. It's the first gymnast I've ever seen do this. There is, of course, a category in gymnastics called originality, so he will get at least 1/10 of a point for that. But where things get really nice in this exercise is midway through. Watch this sequence. Beautiful front toss, right into a heely twirl. Another front toss. Beautiful heely twirl. That is so difficult. Timing is so critical. Splits to a handstand. Very polished performer. Double pike somersault, and he rocks the landing. Now that is a 1.5. Boy.
Rustem Sharapov, what a performance it was. He's been chasing Sherbo all day, and I think finally he may have gained some ground on him. That was a fine, fine set.
First gymnasts we've seen stick the landing on the parallel bars. Athletes seem to have a little bit of problem on that event. Look at his mount.
They just flashed his score, 9.9.
And some of that, Leandra, because of that originality in that mount.
We'll be back with more. Don't go away. Welcome back. Tim Daggett along with Leandra Riley here in Stuttgart, Germany. You're looking at Andreas Wecker, and this is the DTB Pokal, the German Cup, as some people like to call it. And the best gymnasts from around the world in attendance here at this international meet.
It truly is one of the most prestigious meets of its type in the world. Long tradition of history. It's a meet that this young man would like to add to his vast array of titles.
Now, the best score we've seen on the parallel bars went to Rustam Sharapov, 9.9. But again, this is the all-around competition, so it's all 6 events factored into one gold medal.
Almost impossible to match the routine that we saw from Sharapov. It was just stock full of difficult elements and original combinations. Andreas is doing a nice job. He goes to the outside of the bars as well, but he does it in a more traditional fashion in the middle of the bars. His dismount, double pike somersault, and 2 to 3 of those little hops. He should have made up his mind and taken one big one, I think.
I agree. I think it looks worse when you take a little scoochy steps instead of just one small step. One small step. 9-7 is the score for Wecker as we now look at Dejan Kolev of Bulgaria. Our first opportunity to see this gymnast is also competing on the parallel bars.
Well, we've seen just about every way you can mount this event so far. Chooses to do it at the end of the bars, similar to Sherbo. Stuts to a handstand, very common element on the parallel bars. Most important basic skills. Now that's original. Boy, I've never seen that before. A cast with a full twist. He really doesn't have the technique that we're seeing from some of the other athletes. Back tosses, lands in a handstand. But you know, you can't deduct if the guy doesn't make a mistake. His execution and his technique maybe not up to par of some of the other athletes, but he gets the job done, so good exercise. Look at this skill. He casts off, does a full pirouette. I like it. Very innovative.
Score was 9-5 for Kolev and his originality as we now look at Zoltán Supala of Hungary, remaining with the parallel bars. Now, before the commercial, we saw a parallel bar score of 9.9. Then we saw Wecker get a 9.7 and Kolev get a 9.5. Let's see what Supala can do.
He also mounted the bars on the outside. Those skills right there, they're called Healy twirls. In gymnastics, each skill has a level, A being easiest, B, C, up to the D level skills. Those are D skills that are most difficult. This is interesting. Coach moving over to be spotting some type of element. Maybe just holding the bars a little bit more stable. Nice dismount. Boy, we're seeing a lot of different elements in this competition.
I think you hit it right in the head. He was standing there to stabilize the bars. It's not nailed into the ground. That's on a wide base, and it could have rocked up as he peeled off. So Supala ends up with a 9.65 as we looked at Max Krauberg of Germany.
This is the first time for us to take a look at this young man from Germany. You notice also that there appears to be an extra landing mat right there. It's very soft, and of competitions of this nature, it's up to the meet referee and the organizing committee to decide whether or not additional landing mats will be allowed. And personally, I'm a great fan of that. Gymnastics is getting so crazy. Tkachev right there, and that's a perfect example of why he's glad he's got that extra mat.
He was peeling off.
He lets go a little bit too late, Leandra, and cannot quite get his hands around that bar. Unfortunately, when you fall off, it is 0.5 of a point. Let's look and see what went wrong here. Maybe he doesn't rotate enough, so his arms are not in the correct position. And right at the end of those fingertips, boy, I bet he wishes he hadn't clipped his fingernails the other day.
Okay, so we're going to leave Krauberg at the high bar as we move back over to the floor exercise where Vitaly Sherbo is getting ready to compete. Now, Freiburg's score, I'm sure, will be somewhere in the eights. We thought it was a little bit more pertinent that you get to see this Florix performance by our leader.
And in my opinion, the best tumbler in the world. More power on this event than anyone. He does his traditional mount. It's a double layout with 2 twists. Incredible difficulty. Just so much harder than anybody in the world. But he takes the step out of bounds, and that is going to cost him a 10th of a point right there.
Do you foresee the day when the 40 by 40 floor exercise area becomes 50 by 50?
Well, there's always a possibility of that happening, Leandra. But it is remarkable what the athletes are doing nowadays, even in that small space. It's such a shame, you know, an athlete like Vitali, he pushes the envelope constantly in this sport. He could do something much easier. He actually did a double layout right there with 2 twists, and athletes are mounting with skills that he could do in his sleep, but it feels like he just has to set the standard. Now he'll dismount with the same skill that many athletes would love to mount with. Watch this double layout, and he does it beautifully. Just the smallest of hops. What an athlete.
Fine performance by Vitaly Sherbo of the Commonwealth of Independent States, formerly the Soviet Union.
Let's watch the most difficult element of the competition.
The double-double. The score 9.6, and on that note, we step aside for a regional break. Soviet Union, now the Commonwealth of Independent States. He is getting ready to compete on his last apparatus, the horizontal bar.
Remember, Leander, what we're looking for is some high-flying action on the high bar. Getting ready for his release skill. It's a Gaylord over the bar. Very nicely done. Chose to do that in the straddle position. Beautiful release skill called a Kacha. You know, his toe point really is not up to par with many of the athletes in this competition. Very uncharacteristic. The former Soviet triple back, though. Oh, just a little bit off balance. Huge step on the landing. And of course, will cost him.
I think in critiquing his form, I think you're absolutely right. Not only were his toes not always pointed, but his feet were together at the heel and apart somewhat at the toe, adding to the form break.
But right here, look at this skill called a Gaylord. Of course, named after Mitch Gaylord, that 1984 Olympic team. Very difficult element. This is his dismount. 3 flips, count them. 1, 2, 3. A little bit over-rotated. Holds on to it too long. Takes that big step back.
9-5 the score for Ruslan Sharipov as we look now at Mike Beckman back over on floor exercise. Mike Beckman of Germany. That's why you're hearing the crowd noise. We are in Stuttgart.
Hometown hero here. Kind of difficult to follow the performances of Vitaly Sherbo on this event. A little bit different. Personally, I'm not a great fan of anybody who starts their exercise rolling out on floor exercise. It's a nice skill, but really not the type of thing that the stronger tumblers are beginning their routines with. That's nice, though. He flares up through the handstand and then comes back down, continuing in the flare position. Just a little bit tentative on that press to a handstand. Not really a substantial deduction, but maybe just puts the wrong impression in the judge's mind. To be a lot of places in this exercise where he's really setting himself up and catching a breath. Maybe he wants to put a little bit more meat into those corners. Here's his dismount here. A 1.5 twist through to a punch front. Very unorthodox routine, and certainly not one of the most difficult that we've seen today.
Loaded with breathers, as we like to say. And the judges agree. 9.45 is the score they've just given Mike Beckman of Germany as we now look at Andreas Wecker.
Andreas recently has had a few problems on this event. In the past did some very difficult elements, but in the last competition that I saw him in, he opted to take them out of his routine. We'll see if he's been able to get rid of a few of those bugs. Used to do a skill called a Kovacs, where he flips over the bar, does 1.5 revolutions or somersault and regrasp. But as I said, the last time out, was having problems and decided not to do it. If he would do it, it would happen right here. And it's back in the routine. Beautiful Kovacs. Nicely done. Caught the bar quite well. Next release skill, reverse heck towards Kachev. That really puts him in a different category. When he was not using that skill, he kind of had to strain to break into the upper nines. But now, he is legitimately there. He does one of the best triples in the world. Knees together. Oh, not enough rotation. Has to take that big step forward. But that's so difficult when you don't pull the legs out to the side. Makes rotating around so much more difficult. But let's look at that release skill that he decided to put back into the exercise. It's a Kovacs, 2 flips over the bar, and he latches on.
9-7 is the score for Becker as we now look at Zoltán Supala of Hungary, also competing on the high bar.
And I don't think that this is one of Zoltán's better events. We've seen some good exercises from him, but he's not as refined as some of the other athletes that we've seen. Oh, Tkachev. And boy, is he ever glad that that mat was there. That's dropping from anywhere, 12, 14 feet in the air. And although they may look soft, they're nowhere near as soft as one might think. He misses the bar by a mile. My goodness, I don't know what he was thinking about there. The athlete has 30 seconds to remount the apparatus. And of course, anytime you do fall off or stop in gymnastics, for both the men and the women, it is a 5-10 deduction. He must do a release skill and regrasp. He does it there. Or there would have been another deduction. But like I said, in addition to the fall, he really is not as refined. He has what we call a shoulder angle. His body is not as extended as it could be. He does difficult gymnastics. You're seeing him doing some of the most difficult skills, but he really doesn't ever finish any of the elements. His dismount looks to be a big one. Triple back somersault and a great landing. Needs to work a little bit on his consistency and a little bit of those finer points that we've spoken of.
So after seeing a 9-7 by Andreas Becker, Zoltán Supala peels off the bars and gets a 9.050. Now you're looking at Germany's Ralf Buchner, also on the high bar.
Well, we've seen a couple of falls here. Let's see if Ralf can remain on the bar. Regrasping, of course, critical. The gymnasts just keep pushing the envelope. Here's his Kovacs, done very well. Actually cleaner than what we saw from Becker. His knees were totally together. He was flipping. Now that skill right there, that's called an inverted giant swing, Deandra. And you must do some form of that. It's a requirement on the high bar. His dismount, a double layout with a full twist. Big step on the landing, but a nice exercise as well.
Ralf Buchner of Germany. As we take another look.
Beautiful high, full twisting double layout, but just a little too much rotation, and hence the step back.
9.65. Now the final results. Vitaly Sherbo, our winner, and it is Rustam Sharipov, his fellow teammate, taking the silver, and Andreas Becker of Germany finishes in third. Here are the top 14, and we'll be back with the women's competition. Don't go away from Stuttgart, Germany.